Americans' engagement with functionality is intensifying as a result of COVID-19, which will impact how they solve for their health needs for years to come. Laurie will be covering and exploring consumers' evolving and emerging beliefs and benefits about functional beverages, with a special focus on younger consumers who are driving the market for innovative formats and flavors. Laurie, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Kate. I am delighted to be here to share this information today. And I should preface this by saying all of this information is pulled from a report that was fielded in April of this year. So obviously the pandemic was already playing a role in how consumers were making decisions about products. And what we've seen for the past few years is that there's been a surge of interest, both consumer interest and manufacturer interest in the functional beverage space. Not a brand new category, it's been around for a while, but there's been a real proliferation of products in the past few years. Now, what's happened in the past several months is that consumer interest has just been dialed up exponentially, which is obvious because people are thinking about their health and wellness at this time. So I'm going to dive into this, and I do want to also say that I'm happy to share this information if people are interested, so we'll make the deck available. Now, why is there this new interest in functional beverage? And there's a number of consumer trends that are taking place right now that we're spending a lot of time really digging into. And there's two on this page I want to focus on, the first one and the third one. The first one is around this idea of personal empowerment. Now, clearly, US consumers right now, and consumers in the world for that matter, are feeling like things are out of control. There's so much going on. We're not really sure how to keep our families safe. We're worried about a potential recession coming up. And so consumers are really trying to focus on things they feel like they can control within their household. Things like what they consume, what sort of money they're spending, how much time and energy they're devoting to things. And so this idea of taking control is definitely playing a role in terms of their interest in functional beverages. Third thing on this, new emphasis on resiliency. During this time, we're feeling, as I noted, our health is under risk and really feeling like we want to do a better job protecting ourselves and our families. And this resiliency is everything from physical resiliency, meaning I want to stay healthy, I don't want to get sick, to mental and emotional resiliency. We found even pre-COVID that stress and anxiety is now the #1 consumer condition that they're thinking about. And so the stress and anxiety has only been dialed up during this time. And so there's a sense that we want to stay resilient, we want to stay happy, and they're looking to products to help them with that. They don't want to go all the way to over-the-counter medications necessarily, or prescription medications. They're looking for food, and especially for beverage, to help solve for some of these needs. So that's one of the reasons we're seeing so much interest in this category in the past few months. Now, what are the reasons for using functional foods and beverages? And I should note that all of these findings are representative of the US population. So they're good numbers to look at to see what the opportunity looks like. And what we've done on these slides I'm sharing is that we've indicated where certain segments of consumers over-index for these attitudes and behaviors. What I'm going to be drawing your attention to a lot is this little green triangle. That green triangle represents the Gen Z consumer, so consumers that are under 23 years of age, consumers that are likely to be our future consumers in the upcoming years, because there's a lot of interesting elements going on with that younger consumer. Now, in general, what this page is showing is that for most consumers, they're using functional foods and beverages almost like a backup plan, right? Maybe I'm not getting quite enough of the nutrition I need, everything my body needs, and so I'm taking these products as just sort of general insurance. Similar to that, the #3 thing on this list, preventing possible disease, illness, injury, that's especially important. You can see here to some of those older consumers, the Gen X and the Boomer consumers, so folks who are 45 years of age and older. What I think is most interesting here, though, is where you see that green triangle and the second thing down, looking for a specific benefit. These are the younger consumers who are engaged in the functional foods and the functional beverage category, but what they're really seeking is a very specific benefit in most cases. They're not necessarily concerned with just general aging or insurance, but they're looking for these products to do something for them. So from a marketing standpoint, communication standpoint, it's really important if you're in the functional beverage space to make sure that consumers understand what your specific benefit is. Now, moving on to what the functional beverage user looks like, there's a bunch of information on this page. I'm just going to point out one or two of the most important things. #1, a full 56% of the adult population in the US says they're currently using a functional beverage of some sort, at least occasionally. Now, I'll show you in a moment that usage can be just hydration, but in many cases, it's these more kind of specific functional targeted benefits. This consumer tends to over-index to millennials. So if you look at the bottom of the slide there at that circle, millennials being 44% of all functional beverage users. And therefore not surprising that the functional beverage user tends to have kids in the household. There's an over-index to certain ethnic groups because they're overrepresented in that younger population. But this is a consumer that isn't, I think, sort of our traditional sense of someone who's using functional products, an older consumer. It's actually a much younger consumer who, again, is looking for these very targeted day-to-day benefits. Now, what are those benefits? What this slide is showing in the kind of dark orange there are people who are currently using a product for one of these conditions on the left. The lighter orange is people who say they're interested in using a functional beverage product for that condition. So I want to point out a few things here. Number one, over a third of consumers are using functional beverages for hydration, perhaps not surprising. And that tends to be products that have electrolytes in them. So they're being used for recovery after exercise or just general hydration throughout the day. Most other conditions you can see there are being used by a lesser number of consumers, so about 1 in every 5 or less. But there's a lot of interesting things on this list, right? Energy, which is a really important platform to think about. We're hearing again from younger consumers, especially this need for just energy day to day to keep themselves going. What I think is most interesting about this is you see the huge number of people who are interested in using functional beverages for many of these conditions. So things that sort of pop, general prevention, immunity, not surprisingly, again, given this was fielded in April, almost 60% of consumers either using a functional beverage product or interested in using a functional beverage product for immunity. So that's a huge opportunity there. Also want to draw your attention down to something else that pops, which is brain cognition and mental acuity. Now, cognitive health traditionally has been something primarily older consumers were only interested in, and it was really about the prevention of sort of cognitive decline, keeping their wits about them. What we're finding actually is younger consumers are even more likely to be using products for cognitive health. So across the general population, we're finding that, about 40% of consumers are using something for brain health, beverage, OTC, et cetera. But if you look at the Gen Z consumers, it goes all the way up to almost 60%. Now, what cognitive health means for them is different than it is for older consumers. For the younger consumers, it's really more about clarity, focus, but that's a very important platform across generations. What are the specific ingredients that people are seeking in beverages, functional beverages? You see some of the sort of traditional ingredients at the top of this list, things like antioxidants, electrolytes. But as you draw your eye down, again, take a look for that green triangle. These are ingredients that over-index to younger consumers. And there's some of the sort of newer, more modern ingredients, greens, coconut water, seeds, whey protein, coconut oil, CBD. So many of these involving ingredients, things that are just making their way to the market, are of particular importance to those younger consumers. I'll also say that in this study, we asked about some of the ingredients associated with immunity, and those are seeing a lot of pops. So elderberry, hibiscus, oil of oregano, olive leaf, all sorts of things that consumers are looking to help with their immune health during this time. Now, attributes that they're looking for across functional foods and beverages, and again, a lot going on here. I want to point out the top findings we've bucketed here, but I'm going to tell you what the top 5 attributes are that consumers are seeking across all of these. Number 1, good tasting. That never goes away. So even when consumers are in this functional space looking for products that have very specific benefits, it still has to taste good. The vast majority of consumers will not give up taste as an attribute when it comes to functionality. Number 2 attribute looked for, natural. Now that word can mean a lot of things to different consumers, but generally what it means is products that don't have a lot of additives, don't have a lot of ingredients, that have been processed in a way that's fairly minimal. And so just a sense of being natural, short ingredient list, ingredients that consumers can pronounce is very important to get into that space. Third attribute, no artificial flavors, colors, preservatives. Again, assigned to many consumers that something is more healthful. Number 4 is sugar-free. That sort of dual platform of high protein and low to no sugar, increasingly important to consumers across all products, but especially in the functional space. And then number 5, lowest cost per unit / dose. Just like taste, value and cost don't go away. They're always on the table. That's not to say that consumers aren't willing to pay a bit more for functional foods and beverages, but they want to be really thoughtful about what price they are paying and still make sure they get like a fair price. And one last thing to note on the slide, again, is you look for those green triangles that symbolize the younger consumers, you see a lot of attributes that are a little bit more nuanced. Certified organic, clean label, glyphosate free, vegan. So some of these more kind of specific attributes are of equal importance to those younger consumers as some of the large ones. And then I also want to note that in this study, we took a lot of looks at what was happening because of the pandemic and how it was affecting behavior. What this slide is showing is a variety of behaviors that consumers say they're either engaging in more or less because of the pandemic. Not surprising, although not the focus right now for the comments I want to make, cooking at home, no surprise. Most consumers, 2/3 of Americans, feel like they're doing a lot more. And what I want to note there, both cooking and the 2 thing here, new recipes to try, are not specific just to food. That's a really growing area of interest for the beverage category as well. So consumers looking to make juices at home, smoothies at home, kombucha at home for those more adventuresome consumers, and recipes that incorporate beverages as well. So that's obviously a huge opportunity right now as so many people are stuck at home and really looking to explore new tastes and flavors and recipes. But importantly, I want you to note the bottom of the slide. The number of consumers who say that because of COVID, they've changed their daily routine to now consume more functional foods and beverages. You can see 29%, almost 1/3 of Americans say that they're now seeking functionality in foods and beverages. Clearly a huge opportunity area, especially because what we're finding is that for so many consumers, these health and wellness behaviors that they're starting to undertake because of COVID are likely to be things they're going to continue to do. They're not going to suddenly drop out of the category when things get back to normal. They're going to continue these behaviors. So now is really the time to think about how to target consumers with functional beverages. So a few final thoughts in terms of implications from this research. Number one, this moment that we're in where consumers are feeling really out of control and looking for ways to take control of their health and ways to be more resilient to disease. Really functionality and especially functional beverages is seen as a category that can help them feel like they're taking back that control. Secondly, health and wellness solutions, although very important, have to take in mind these very pragmatic things that consumers are also considering. Time, energy, money, especially as they worry about impending recession. And moreover, getting into their routines and rituals day to day. So if that functional beverage could become part of what they do every morning at breakfast, it's likely to be something that's going to continue far after this time as well. Third, in terms of the benefit areas you think about, and again, as a reminder, really speaking specifically about what your benefits are is really important, especially to younger consumers who are looking for these targeted solutions. Platforms around immunity, obvious, cognitive health, clarity, focus, day-to-day energy is another important one, stress management, which already we are seeing huge numbers of consumers say was an issue for them pre-COVID, emotional health, and then digestive health, with so many consumers now thinking about how digestive health affects their entire bodily system and not just their gut. Rest and sleep, which consumers are looking to improve, get more of. And then some things that are a little more nuanced around inflammation and hormonal health are out there on the horizon. And then finally, this whole sense of what's happening with functionality today is a very quickly moving and evolving category. Beverage formats are especially appealing to younger consumers, but we have to remember that even though we're in the functional space and that they're seeking health and wellness benefits, we have to be thoughtful about, number one, the sensory experience, taste, texture, aroma, format, etc. And number two, quality. And that means in many cases, a lack of sort of bad stuff, right? That the ingredient list looks really clean. And it also looks to consumers to be something that is a fresh, a real, and a less processed product.